So this is a part of the countdown where I get to count down albums number 10 through 6. And there's certain difficulties obviously with doing a countdown like this. One is listening to the records again and trying to have a fresh perspective. And the other one, of course, is what exactly is going to be the ranking. And while doing this, especially when I wrapped up the last one, I almost wanted to redo it because I'm like, wait a minute, you know, should I have ranked up at number 11 or should I have pushed it into this part where I get into records 10 through 6? Because for me, there are times when I much, much prefer up to the record behind me. This is a record that comes in at number 10. I had a commenter call REM real enigmatic music, and I totally agree with that. I'd never heard that before, but there can be a huge enigma to REM. I think that part of their charm, part of what made them such an important band to so many of us, was their enigma. You did not know quite what was going on from record to record. You didn't know what Stipe was talking about. He rarely did interviews. His public or private life was kind of a mystery. I can't say that I ever really cared. I remember being in early college, and this is around the time Green came out or afterwards, and a friend of mine, a new friend that I met, and I was like, I think he's gay, and I was like, I never even thought of that, that Michael Stipe was gay or bi. It just never entered my thoughts. I mean, I thought he was with not only Merchant at times, I'd heard that, but other than that, I never really paid attention to that at all. I suppose it sort of started to come up around the time of Automatic for the People. I remember listening to an interview, like Rockline, I think it was, with Mike Mills and Peter Buck doing the promo or being on that show. And there were rumors that Stipe had AIDS, and they're like, no, 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 he's healthy as a horse. He does not have AIDS. And then I started to kind of wonder. But with this record, it certainly opened up a whole new chapter for them. This is one of the key points in their career where they reinvented themselves. My first taste of this was the video for What's a Frequency Kenneth. I didn't have MTV at the time, and I talked to a friend of mine in college, and I went over to his place and was kind of obnoxious about, okay, it's going to be on, and he could care less. He wasn't a fan. And when that video came on, the sound was shocking. These just really loud, distorted guitars. But maybe what was even more shocking for me was the way that Stipe and Mills looked, especially Stipe. Now this video was shot kind of from the ground up. Like you saw their feet first or their legs, and then it gradually pulled up and you saw the whole band. Stipe was bald. Okay, he shaved his head. He looked edgier. He looked more like a rock star, like he was playing the game more. And Mike Mills had those nudie suits, which was quite shocking because he was always such a nerdy guy in REM. Immensely talented, but not always, didn't always look the rock star part. And here he was kind of playing that up a bit. He'd grown out his hair, and Peter Buck kind of looked the same. Bill Berry looked the same, but there was clearly something going on where they were more of a like hard rock, grunge, whatever you want to call it. They had shifted, and I remember welcoming it, being pretty happy about that because when Out of Time came out, it seemed so kind of unexpected for them. The stripped downness of it, but also the goofy songs like Shiny Happy People, Radiohead or Radio Song to some extent, and the songs by Mike Mills. I'll get into that album a little later here, but and then we had Automatic for the People, and I think some people thought, me included, that might be where they plugged in the electric guitars again and kind of showed what a rock band they are. And they hadn't toured in forever either. Remember when Automatic for the People, I saw the article or the advertisement, I think it was in Billboard, and I was shocked they had an album out so quickly, a new one. Then the very bottom it said still no tour. So, they hadn't toured since '89. And I remember them saying after Automatic, I thought they said it before then, but they're like, okay, we're locking up the mandolins for real this time, and we are going to make a rock record. And they did. It just wasn't the rock record that I think most of us were expecting. I thought it'd be a rock record like Life's Rich Pageant, Document, Green, at least the rockier songs on Green. But it was something completely different. I guess they recorded on a soundstage. Grunge was huge. I mean, they released quite albums that are completely grunge less, really. I mean, an Automatic for the People and Out of Time when grunge was really exploding. And I wouldn't even call this a grunge album. Some people would just because the guitars are really loud and they're trying new things. And Thurston Moore's on a song, but it's really more of a glam record. But it's definitely plugging into like sort of an identity, especially in the lyrics with Stipe singing about these creepy characters. He's out. It's very loud. Whereas he used to hide in the shadows, now he is out about his sexuality, out as okay, I'm a rock star, let's live the part, out politically. I mean, everything. He's just like out. And the bright orange balloon that this is a picture of on the cover is a pretty good indication. Just kind of what it sounds like. It's bold. And I remember going to a listening party after I saw that video and kind of liking it. And the local radio station was all over it, the alternative station in Minneapolis. And I was kind of like, okay, cool. This is kind of fun. This is different. I must say though, I didn't really take to it. I didn't take to some of the outness that he was doing. As far as, I have no problem with him being out about his sexuality. I think it's great if he inspired more people to be out with their sexuality. And I think maybe that's part of the reason he did it. Like, why am I hiding this? It was just an outness that was so boldly playing the rock star part that I think started to kind of wane on me a little bit. I never thought it'd be possible to get sick of Stipe, but I did on the promotional cycle for this record. And I just I can see for the first time why people would get annoyed by them. Because I did, and I was an uber fan. The record's great though. I mean, it's not one I play very often. I must say I've taken to it a lot more over the years than I did initially. I probably didn't listen to it for 5, 6, 7, 8 years at all, and then came back to it. I mean, probably 10 years ago now. I kind of got into it a little bit more. I remember working out and playing it if I needed something kind of, upbeat, or just car. Sometimes a car would sound really good. I still think there's real highlights on here. I absolutely love What's the Frequency, Kenneth, and partly because every time I'd see them live after this, they would do that song, and it always sounded so good, except maybe on the Monster Tour. That is the only time that I saw R.E.M. that I was just like, I didn't really care for it. And I dragged a friend along who wasn't into them, and I was kind of like, and you're just like, I swear they're usually better than this. And there was probably nothing wrong with it. It just was not the same band and the same kind of energy that I had fallen in love with. But like I said, it's a good album. Crushed with Eyeliner has Thurston Moore on it. I Don't Sleep, I Dream for some reason I've always liked. I love Tongue. Sad Currencies recently got some attention in The Bear, which I really liked in the series. Never crazy about it on this record. Tongue is gorgeous. I really like the Kurt Cobain tribute, Let Me In. Really, really powerful live. On the tours after this, I really remember it more than on the Monster Tour. And You, and some of the songs, it sounds very similar all the way through. It's kind of that fuzzed out guitar thing. Peter Buck has discovered some new toys that aren't mandolins and acoustic instruments, and he's trying out all these pedals and stuff. And it can sound very samey, but also on more recent tours, I Took Your Name and Circus Envy started to kind of pop out more for me. So this is my number 10. I still think it's a good record. I think it's a record that it really depends on your age and when you came to R.E.M. If you were in high school or middle school, later years in middle school, and this was your introduction to R.E.M., you probably love this record. They sort of reinvented themselves. They became hip for that audience and kind of left some of us scratching our heads. I do remember reading an article that Peter Buck's he said something like, yeah, someday people will look back at this record and go, yeah, there's just a weird record they made in 1994. And yeah, there's been so many that, yeah, for a while when it was new, carried a lot more weight. Now it's just like, oh, that is an interesting record, and certainly gave them some songs to play live that weren't, the slower songs from Automatic and Out of Time. So that's the number 10 record for me. Number 9, I realize some of these would be controversial for sure. Number 9 is Out of Time. Okay, one of their most popular records. This is the record that has Use Your Illusion on, Guns N' Roses reference. No, Losing My Religion. Losing My Religion. This is the record that threw them into the stratosphere. I was in college early college at the time, and I remember hearing that on like MTV or something for the first time. I didn't hear an REM record over the radio, a single. I heard it on a video, and just being kind of like, okay, that sounds interesting. I of course couldn't wait to buy the record, but I was not in love with that song. I usually do have a hard time with singles of bands I'm really into. I want to hear the record in its entirety and how the single fits into it. I must say, I'm one of the only people probably that never cared for that song that much. I didn't like the way they did it live. It always seemed a little too upbeat for me. I remember there was this promotional video they did around this album, and it had them playing like on a porch, kind of slower versions of the songs. And I really liked the version of "Losing My Religion" when it had more room to breathe and was kind of freed from the drums and all that. I liked it a lot better. I think it's great lyrically. For some reason it just did not grab me. But I must say, when I bought this the day it came out, it was such a shock in a way. And that shock begins with KRS-One saying, "Hey, I can't find nothing on the radio." You're like, wait a minute, what? Turn to that station, and then it like starts, and Stipe comes in, and then he later on, KRS-One does this little rap in it, and you're like, what is this? I must say, I really like that song though. Some people have a problem with it. I don't. I do have a problem with "Shiny Happy People." I never cared for it, and I just hate the fact that the first three words out of some people's mouth when you mention REM would be "Shiny Happy People." Like, I just cringed. It is so unlike that band, the band I knew or the band I fell in love with. But there are certain highlights on this record. It does sound a hell of a lot warmer on vinyl. I got it about, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, and I noticed a big change. And I also started to appreciate it more as this kind of eclectic, interesting, weird record for a pop record. I mean, you have stuff like Country Feedback, which I absolutely love, and Half a World Away, and then you've got these two songs by Mike Mills, where he's singing that did, like, R.E.M. never sound like that when he was doing backup vocals or anything. Texarkana and Near Wild Heaven. And then you have, of course, Shiny Happy People with Kate Pearson, and then the other one with Kate Pearson that I absolutely love, which is Me and Honey, the closing song, kind of a response to Eat for Two by 10,000 Maniacs, having a baby from the male's perspective, or pregnancy from the male's perspective. And you have two songs that were carried over from the Green Tour, which was Belong and Low. It's a pretty good record. I just think it's such a weird record for REM to break through. I think Losing My Religion's a strange song, too, for them to be known for. Losing My Religion and Shiny Happy People. What? But hey, they did things their own way. It was only a matter of time before they broke through, and it took them 7 records to just totally break through, where they actually became a household name. My little cat's in the background. She's kind of a kitten. We were told she's 9 months old. We have a hard time believing that little black thing. If I can grab her, I'll show her on here. But that's what that extra noise you hear is. It's the little cat. Anyway, so that is my number 9. Number 8 is Fables the Reconstruction. I mean, some people, it used to be people's favorite. Like, it was like their number 1 record. I remember when I first got into REM, this girl that I had a crush on that worked at the record store was like, Fables is my favorite. And I always felt like it was a very mysterious record. I mean, starting with the cover, it reads Fables of the Reconstruction, and then if you turn it over, which I'm not going to do because it will reveal the record behind it, it says Reconstruction of the Fables. There's 2 different album covers, just on the LP alone. It can read either way. The spine says Fables of the Reconstruction of the Fables, and it's written so you can read it from both directions. So you could stack it like this and read the title, or you could stack it the other way. I recently found out that the working title for this record was Reconstruction, which apparently was a suggestion from Mike Mills' father. And it was more about reconstructing the band, going back to basics. They had a hard time, I guess, with all the touring and all that, and this was like their attempt to sort of reconstruct what the band was. And it does sound quite different than Murmur and Reckoning, for sure. More stripped down. Peter Buck's playing with some more dissonant kind of guitar stuff, and you hear that in Feeling Gravity's Pull and other song, Auctioneer. Stipe's getting a little bit closer to like cohesiveness with lyrics, where you can actually understand what he's talking about. A lot of people thought, I think the band did too, or sold it as a kind of Fables of the Reconstruction, as in Reconstruction of the South. But there's, other than local character studies like Wendell Gee and Old Man Kinsey, you wouldn't really know that. I mean, the trains, I guess, the locomotive song, Driver 8, but it really just seems like it's more just him writing songs based on people that he saw. He wasn't from the South originally, so I think he had a fascination type with the South. But also the band just kind of playing a little bit more stripped down, trying something new. Although when you go back and listen to this, it doesn't seem, at least to my ears, quite as stripped down as I remembered it. But it's a good record. It just feels, in some ways, for me, and it's produced by Joe Boyd, which is kind of surprising too, of Pink Floyd, Fairport Convention Records, Richard Thompson Records, Nick Drake Records. It doesn't really have his kind of stamp. I guess no R.E.M. record has really the producer's stamp on it, but it just sounds, in some ways, this album just sounds unfinished to me. Like they needed to put in a little bit more time. Joe Boyd has said that it's the only band he's ever worked with, R.E.M. This was recorded in London with him, that wanted the singer, the guitar player, the bassist, the drummer, all wanted their parts turned down instead of up, and so it didn't give him anything to build the sound around. And it's the record too. If you play the vinyl or the cassette, and by the way, the cassette had yet a different cover, and the foreign markets had another cover for Fable. So it's just very mysterious record of theirs. But if you play the vinyl or the cassette, maybe even the early CD, it sounds quite different than the remastered version you would hear on iTunes, or probably the one that, yeah, I remember when I bought the CD re-release that came out, I don't know, probably 2006 or something like that. That sounded quite different too. So I'm glad I have an original copy. I think they tried to make it sound more like today, but I prefer the way it was originally intended. But Fables of the Reconstruction, that is my number 7. Or 8 rather. Number 7 is New Adventures in Hi-Fi. Some people pick this as their favorite. I loved it after Monster. I felt like it was a reset. It was back into subtlety a little bit. There were no interviews done around it. There are not that many anyway. Stipe seemed to take a backseat role in it a little bit. It wasn't all over the charts. I love the artwork on it. It was recorded mostly live at sound checks. Here's a band that had not toured in 5 years, had put out 3 new records since the last time they had toured, 2 of which were absolutely huge. All 3 of them performed incredibly well. You've got Out of Time, which had the big hit, Losing My Religion on it. Automatic for the People was like, turned so many additional people onto the record and carried that momentum forward. And then you had Monster, which is like a rock reset. And they finally did a tour with Monster. But then, R.E.M. decides that while they're on tour, they're going to write and record a new record, which is like, wow, what overachievers. You've got 3 records to promote, but you're going to start playing songs live in your set of yet another record that would be the 4th one, essentially, in a row. And they recorded this at soundchecks, recorded it live, of course, recorded it at, there's one song they recorded backstage. And then when they were done with the tour, they took a few months off, and then they went to a studio in Seattle and recorded another 4, I think, songs in a studio. But it is a sprawling record. It's probably the longest R.E.M. record at that point, for sure. I mean, Up might be slightly longer. I think of both of them as double records, even though at the time, they were never marketed that way. But they sprawl over 2 different albums each, and I think they play really nicely in that context if you think of them as a double record. I had sort of a rediscovery of this record when I did pick it up on vinyl, more so with the lyrics. I mean, it's just really interesting lyrics, him traveling, kind of a traveling record, of course. You've got the duet with Patti Smith. You've got these character studies like Blinky the Doormat, Electrolyte, Turn of the Century type song, Bittersweet Me, which I never really cared for. That one kind of bombed. You've got a song called it bombed as a single, or didn't perform as well as like Strange Currencies, for example. And then you have a song like So Fast So Numb, which was like such a good song, but it's like almost buried at the end of it. And Low Desert. I really like the ending of this record quite a bit. It's like, it is a journey, and it's an incredibly good live or record to play when you're driving. I really really like this record when I was driving. From the moment I got it, I always felt like it just revealed more and more on long road trips, like it looks like on the cover. But it was just like kind of a reset for REM, incorporating more of the kind, I guess, classic sound a little bit with songs like Electrolyte or New Test Leper. It was sort of like bringing back the sound of Automatic a little bit with the Monster song. Of course, a lot of it was recorded on the Monster tour. And yeah, and trying new things. I mean, Leave and the first song, How the West Was Won. I mean, just really kind of departures for them, which I think would continue with their next album, Up. But a really good record. The only kind of critique I have about it is the sequencing at the very beginning. Just like Up, where you've got Airport Man and then you've got Lotus coming, like flying out of the speakers. I have the same problem with this one, where you've got How the West Was Won, and then you've got Wake Up Bomb. Just a fine song. It's really cool. Cool tribute to Iggy Pop and T-Rex and glam. But it just seems so out of place when you're settling into a record, and then you're like, whoa, 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 go for the volume, turn that down. So that's my only complaint. I almost wish that was separate single too, in a way. They did that with Revolution, another song that easily could have been on here that was from the same sessions, I believe, that ended up on some Batman sequel soundtrack. But anyway, that is number 6 for me, or number 7 for me. Number 7 is New Adventures in Hi-Fi. And I know some people would put this way up there, especially I think people that came on board with Monster. It is a hell of a record. All these top 10 records are really hard to decide what order they go into. And I could do this countdown a year from now, and the order might be quite different in this particular section of the countdown. So this is number 7. Number 6 is probably going to surprise some people too. This is REM's very first record, Murmur. Now, Murmur has the distinction of being the very first REM record I ever got. I traded it for a White Man's Blues, Clapton, Beck and Page record. I think leftover tracks from the Yardbirds. I traded it with my friend Mike. I believe his sister, who was older and in college, gave him this record, the cassette, and he didn't really care for it. So we made the switch. It took me forever to kind of get into it. I was very intrigued by it, as one would be just looking at the cover, right? Even on a cassette. But it would take a while for me to really appreciate. I loved Radio for Europe. I loved Catapult. I kind of liked Perfect Circle. But it was not the REM record that got me into REM. That would come a few albums later. But I, of course, really appreciate Murmur. There's some people that are like, this was the best album they ever made. They never made an album nearly as good as that after that. I'm not one of those people. In fact, for me, Murmur is, I feel weird saying this, but kind of not my REM. They had changed a little bit, even with their next album, Reckoning. And the more rock, slightly more coherent REM is the REM I tend to gravitate to the most. And this record was just sort of impenetrable. I grew to like it. I do like it. I listened to it recently and I kind of loved it. Like, it's a weird record. I mean, it kind of sounds like it looks. I mean, it's just like this super... The songs are kind of strange. There's sort of there is almost like an 80s, like... I don't know, like 80s drum beat thing going on to it. It definitely has, of that period, more than, say, Reckoning or Fables. But it's a brilliant record, and it's so, it got probably, when I got into REM, I found this other record called So Much Younger Then. This came out in like 89. I bought it, the Exclusive Company. I'm a big fan of the Dark Stuff's channel. And who knows, he worked there. Maybe I bought this from him if he was there in 1989. But So Much Younger Then is one of several bootlegs of R.E.M. from before Murmur, before Chronic Town, before even Radio Free Europe. This album came out, well, not an album, it's a bootleg. It says recorded live in 1981. Here are the songs that are on there. And there's others that have more songs. I think this is probably just highlights from maybe one show. But none of these songs, not a single one, made it onto either the single, the EP, or Murmur. And if you listen to these songs, a lot of them will sound like a band searching. Stipe sounds like he's trying to be Elvis in some songs. I'm not exaggerating. By the time they got to around to recording Murmur, they had changed considerably. They'd found their own sound. Stipe was less cohesive lyrically than he is on this stuff. And, the thing is, he was trying to be kind of like a member of the band, not having the vocals and the lyrics be more dominant than anything else in the band. And it worked brilliantly. But I've heard that people that saw them live in Athens and other places when they were doing these little tours before Murmur came out were shocked that Murmur sounded the way it did. And the songs were so different than what they had heard them play live over the years. But it's such a unique record. It's quite layered. There's a lot of interesting things going on in the mix. And it's quite a weird record for your first record, but it worked for them. My God, it got so much attention. Not so much, I don't think that translated so much into sales, but I mean, people of a certain age that were into this kind of music were just blown away by it. It topped a lot of critics' best albums of the year in 1983. And just a brilliant, brilliant way to begin their career. I absolutely love songs on here now. I know it so much better. I've heard it a ton of times. Although I must say it's never been one that I've completely obsessed over. I tend to save it for special occasions when I really, really want to listen to it. I don't put it on the car. I don't get into it the way I would other records where I just play it over and over and over. I tend to kind of savor Murmur, and I think it's still a mysterious record for me. I love Radio Free Europe. I love Laughing. I love Pilgrimage. A song like Moral Kiosk. Absolutely think Perfect Circle was brilliant. I think that they've said that that's the song that they knew they were a real band when they recorded that, and I think that really, it's just devastating when they do that live. It's so beautiful. And there's other songs like Shaking Through always sounds good to me. 9/9. I mean, it's a great album. It's hard to think of anything that I would pick where they go wrong on it. I don't think they do at all. I think it's a hell of a album. It's a brilliant first album. Like I said, though, it's just not quite the R.E.M. for me. I think if I was a little bit older, I might love this album and then be like, R.E.M. sold out, and by the time Life Search Pageant or Document came out, be like way less interested. I'm not. Those albums tend to rank a little higher for me, which you will see in my next part 3, or I guess part 4 if you count the introduction, but the final 5 of my top 15 studio albums, countdown of R.E.M. Thanks.